Hello YouTube. This is my 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee with the 4.7 litre V8 in it. I was going to do a whole video kind of series on installing a hydrogen on demand HHO kit onto this car, but I was kind of making it up as I went along, so I thought I'd just do a video at the end and tell you how it was working, if it was working, because it was kind of an experiment. So I had to get rid of the airbox. I'm not really a fan of pod filters, I'd rather just the stock airbox, but it was really big and I had nowhere to put the hydrogen generator. So first step was I took that out, drilled a hole or a real tight fit for the intake hose of the hydrogen, goes into the air filter, just a standard pod filter on there, just for testing purposes obviously. So next was installing this. It's a temporarily installed, but you've got your hydrogen generator there into the water supply tank and the bubbler tank, and then it comes down here into the bubbler up into the intake up there. Now on a carbureted car, that is all you'd need, and you'd tune the carburetor to lower the fuel. But on a fuel injected car it becomes much more complicated. First I'll just go over how I wired up the hydrogen generator itself, and then I'll take you over the two other things that are most important for putting it onto a fuel injected car. So first I got a wire off the alternator, quite a thick wire because it's carrying quite a lot of amps, through a fuse, which is a 25 amp fuse in there, down through the dash. Ideally I'd have a relay controlled switch, but this is a very hoary but a light switch, and you turn it on and the power goes through to the generator and you turn it off. I did get a flat battery once because I left it on, which is not good for anything, so a relay with a ignition switch on there, so when you turn the car on it turns on, and it will turn off automatically when the ignition is turned off. That is what you want, not this. Anywho, that does work just the same. So it runs, the positive cable then runs up through here. I've run it through the bonnet seal, I guess you could call it, and then it comes down into the positive end of the hydrogen generator. The negative just comes down under there into a ground and then produces the gas. Okay, so the two main other things, I can't really show you this on camera because the O2 sensors are way down there, but on bank 1 and bank 2 O2 sensors I put O2 sensor spacers in there to kind of cancel them out and make them not recorrect, because they will always want to recorrect back to the stock fuel settings, and you don't want that because your car is probably going to run worse, and it's going to sense the extra oxygen produced when you produce the hydrogen, and then it's going to richen your mixture and dump more fuel in, and then you're going to get worse fuel savings. So that's where a lot of the misconception comes around about hydrogen not actually working and making it worse, because it's fuel injected cars. So you need the O2 spacers, but I found that it worked great for the first 300-400 kilometers, and then it would automatically reset and get worse. So I think that is because the O2 sensor wires, the O2 sensors and the spacers were still trying to recorrect, it just did it a lot slower than normal, and then all your fuel savings went out the door basically. So what I'm going to do soon is wire switches into both the sensor wires of the O2 sensors, so I can turn them off and then run them with the map enhancer, which I'll talk about in a second. So then you can completely shut the O2 sensors off, and you can turn them back on if you want to run it on normal gasoline. That's another problem I had when you turn the map sensor off, so you'd run it without the hydrogen, just completely normal. Because the O2 sensors were spaced, the fuel mixture was off, they ran poorly, the car didn't have as much grunt or power, and it did use more gas than just having normal. So I definitely recommend having an electronic switch for your O2 sensors to turn them off, and then just run the map sensor that controls all the fuel going into the engine, because you'll have the hydrogen as well. Last but not least is probably the most important thing, other than the generator, is this map enhancer, or MAF enhancer, whichever one your car has. This one has a map sensor. So basically what that does is there'll be 3 wires off your map sensor or MAF sensor, and there'll be one constant supply of 5 volts and then one constant supply of, well, just one ground, and then the third one would be your signal wire that goes to your ECU. Basically what you want to do is wire in, see mine is just down there, and you can see under there I have, right down there, I have wired in, so I've cut the sensor wire coming out that goes to the ECU, wired in this one, and it goes into the cab and comes back out and goes to the ECU. And then that wire goes to this map enhancer. Basically it looks a little bit complicated with the dials and everything, but basically this is on and off. Down is normal settings, it bypasses this, so it's just back to running a normal map. Up is on, and then this toggle switch here, you can choose, you can have 2 settings set up, so one's for city and one's for highway. They both do the same thing, they just have different labels. So you can run it a lot leaner at the highway settings and then flick it to highway, and then you'll be on this dial here, and if you're running in the city you'll flick it to there. So this is definitely one of the most important parts about running it, with running hydrogen into a fuel injected vehicle. Without that, and without something done with the O2 sensors, it won't work properly. Okay, the big question, does it actually work? Sort of. I can definitely see how it would work. It worked the first 300 kilometers, which I thought was due to the O2 sensors, so I will try doing that and making it better. There's lots of improvements to be made, that needs to be mounted up properly. The intake probably isn't big enough for a V8, a 4.7 V8, you'd probably need 2 of those. You can buy kits that have 2 air filters there and there, and then one that tees off in the middle. So probably get that done at some point. And it does, yes, it does work. Basically I drive 140 kilometers to work every day on the same road, up and down hills, because it's New Zealand. Nothing's really that straight. Most of it was on highway speeds, so 100 kilometers an hour or 60 miles an hour. And I was spending about $50 a day. Those next 2 trips, because each trip was 140 before it automatically recorrected back to the original fuel settings. Those first 2 trips I spent about $30, maybe a bit less, 25, which was really good. I actually made it 140 kilometers on the E-light, on the fuel light coming up, and the gauge barely seemed to move at all. That's not the best. The gauges aren't the best to go off, the fuel gauge. It's more of just a recommendation, but without running it you can see it move a substantial amount for each one-way trip. So I was really impressed with that. And then after that happened, it kind of stopped working, and then getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where I was probably spending about $60 a day. And then I switched it back to normal, and it was still about $60 a day. And then after another 2 trips it went back to normal, because the O2 sensors were reconnecting. So I need to wire 2 sensor wires and then switch them on and off. Then I'll be able to run completely normal and completely hydrogen. Well, not completely hydrogen, but you know what I mean. And then yeah, that's my experience so far. I would definitely look at an older vehicle to do this too. Maybe that V-dub over there, because that would just be a basic carburetor with a small engine, and you'd easily be able to control how much fuel goes into it. It would just be a lot easier than this. Another option is, instead of having a HHO generator, just having a hydrogen generator. So basically this combines hydrogen and oxygen out the same input, and the only reason you need the MAP sensor and the O2 sensors is because of the added amount of oxygen that goes into it. Because when your O2 sensors sense oxygen, they sense that the vehicle is running lean, so it dumps more fuel into the engine. So basically what you have to do is make the electrodes separate, so the gas coming off the positive and negative come out in separate tubes. The oxygen will just get vented off into the atmosphere, and the hydrogen will go into the engine. Your O2 sensors won't sense any hydrogen, so they will work completely normally, and then you won't need the MAP sensor either. You could still have that in to lean it out a bit, and that's probably going to work a lot better. But basically the main gain you want, because you're only getting about 30% burn on gasoline, so the main thing you want is the hydrogen to go into and mix with the gasoline in the combustion chamber and ignite almost 100% of that gasoline, because it's a much more volatile explosive gas than petrol is. So yeah, I would definitely recommend doing it on an older carbureted vehicle. I like carburetors more, they're just easy to work on, easy to fix. But yeah, that's my review so far. I'll keep doing updates as long as I have the vehicle. I might end up taking it all off, because if I sell the vehicle, I'm not going to sell it with all this and explain everything to them. They'll probably just take it off. So yeah, trying to start a YouTube channel here, so any likes and subscribes would be lovely if you feel like doing that. I'm not pressuring you. But yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.